Okay, guys, what we're going to look at today is how the AP test is going to assess um, learning certain things. And we've looked at before different free responses. And this year it's going to be a little bit different. The AP test is not going to have the 60 multiple choice and then the 3 free response. It's going to be two essays, one a little bit longer, one a little bit shorter. But I want us to look at this because some of us in our class will be taking the AP test. The directions will be a little bit different, but we're going to go straight to the question because this question really deals with what we are dealing with fiscal policy. So I'm going to draw out like how you would do it on the AP exam. And again, we've done this in class before. We've looked at AP style questions, but today we're doing this just as a review, as a summation of our unit. Okay, so it says assume the economy, I don't know what this is, sorry. Okay, it says assume the economy of Artland is currently operating above full employment. So what phase of the business cycle does that tell me? I know I'm asking you a question and I'm going to have to answer myself. Above full employment, that means people are employed. So we're in a expansion. So it asked me on part A to draw a correctly labeled graph of the short run aggregate supply, long run aggregate supply, aggregate demand curves, and show each of the following: the current equilibrium and the real output and price level. So labeled as Y, which Y we know is GDP in the price level. So I need to draw everything at equilibrium, right? So here's my clipboard. Okay, I draw everything at equilibrium. So I'm going to label this 1A. Here's my graph. This is the price level. This is real GDP. And it wanted me to do everything at equilibrium. So this one's my short run aggregate supply. This is my aggregate demand. Here's my equilibrium point, right? And it wanted me to label this Y1. And then it also wanted me to do price level. Sorry, guys, this is not nice. Okay, there we go. I have earned 2 points according to AP. Okay, because it asked me to do everything at equilibrium. Okay, so then let's look at the next one. Okay. Okay. Part 2. The full employment output labeled as YF. So what we are seeing here is that our long run, we're operating above full employment, right? So people have a job. So I know that I am in a expansion and I should have an expansionary gap. So for part 2, all I need to label is YF to show full employment. So I know that if I'm going to put YF here, my long run, I'm going to have my long run on this side, right? Because now this gives me that expansionary gap, and I'm going to label that YF. Great. I've just done part 1, and I've got myself 2 points. Okay, so now let's look at part B. Part B says, assume the central bank, and I'm going to get myself another piece of paper. Actually, no, I could use it on the same one. Assume the central bank and the government do not take any policy actions to close the output gap. So we know we have an expansionary gap, and in an expansion, our problem is inflation. So on your graph in part A, so good, I didn't need to draw another map because it tells me exactly what I need to do. Show how the economy automatically adjusts in the long run and label new equilibrium price level 2. So we know that inflation is going up, right? And when inflation occurs, we know that this is going to affect what people produce, right? Prices are being driven up. So what I will see is my short run aggregate supply curve shift to the right because this shows me price level rising. Great. I've just earned a point. Okay. And then the next thing it says, explain the cause of the adjustment shown in Part B? Well, we're seeing that the short-run aggregate supply curve will shift to the left due to the increase in input price, right? Because as inflation occurs, we know this is called the wage price spiral. Wages go up, prices go up, wages go up, prices go up. And so we are seeing, and I had just talked about this, that now inflation impacts the suppliers because they have to supply less. And so that shows it here. They're supplying less, price is rising up. Okay. So now let's look at Part C. And I've earned 2 points for that. Yep, so I'm now up to 4 points out of 10. Let's look at Part C. Alternatively, suppose the government wants to close that output gap using fiscal policy. Okay, so we know we have an inflationary gap. So I think when I have an inflationary gap, I'm in an expansion. So they need to use contractionary fiscal policy. They need to do what? They need to decrease government spending and increase taxes, right? So I've already just brainstormed in my head what I will be expecting for Part C. So now let's look at the questions in Part C. It says, identify a fiscal policy action the government could implement to close that gap. Great, we just answered it. So what I would have to do, I'm going to come back up here, and you get white paper for this. I'm going to label C1, right? It asks me what the government could do, just one tool, right? It could decrease government, just bear with me on my writing, spending, right? Or, I'm just going to be extra, increase taxes. Great. I've done Part 1. Now let's look at Part 2. Identify, it says, how will the fiscal policy action identified in Part C that we just did, 1, affect the following? The unemployment rate. Well, let's look at this. If the government is going to tax more, right? That means businesses and people are going to get less money. So what happens to the demand for goods? The demand for goods will decrease, right? So if we have less people demanding stuff, unemployment will go what? Up. So there we go. I have to do that now. Unemployment. Did it even ask me to do the rationale? No, but I was thinking in my head, the unemployment rate will increase. Okay, sorry. So, but is this gonna, let's look at the next one. The natural rate of unemployment. I know that my natural rate of unemployment is 5%, right? And it said that a lot of people were employed, right? So the natural rate of unemployment, because it was, there was people working and we were below 5%, this natural rate of unemployment will remain unchanged. The natural rate will remain unchanged. Sorry, my handwriting, it's trying to hold this clipboard and write at the same time was hard. Okay, so there we go. We've gotten C. Now let's look at D. D says, draw a correctly labeled graph of the market for loanable funds. Oh my gosh, now we're getting into monetary policy. I always told you that these first questions, they're going to have fiscal and monetary policy together, and then they go into foreign exchange. But because of this year, we did not get to foreign exchange. It's not on the AP test. It will not be there. So it wants me to draw a correctly labeled graph for the market of loanable funds. Well, is the government spending? No, right? So I just need to draw at this time a loanable funds chart where the government will be demanding less, and it's going to open it up, okay, for other people to, that we know that the government is borrowing less. We know that the Fed is going to make things um, more available for people because the government's not borrowing, so it crowds in, right? So let me first do this first part. And I know I was going through my thinking. It says, really just draw correctly labeled graph for the loanable funds. Okay? And then I have to show the effect. So I'm going to label this D. I just need to draw a graph. So this is the real interest rate. Sorry guys, you can't see that because I'm too close to the camera. Okay, and then this is the quantity of loanable funds. So I'm just going to draw everything at equilibrium. This is a supply of loanable funds, and this is the demand for loanable funds. Okay, now I got a point for that. Well, now that the government is not borrowing loanable funds, right, we are going to see the demand for loanable funds decrease because the government's not spending. So all I do is I make this demand for loanable funds to go to the left. And then we see that the interest rate has decreased, right, for interest rate 1, interest rate 2. That interest rate has decreased. Sorry guys, I was not holding this in a good thing. Okay, so then I have gotten that point. Now let's look at E. Given the interest rate identified in part D, oh, we saw that the interest rate went down, right? Okay. Will the long run aggregate supply curve shift to the right, shift to the left, or remain the same in the long run? Well, if loanable funds, the interest rate has now decreased, right? The lower interest rate will lead to, do people want to borrow at a lower interest rate? Yes, I just asked myself a question. But now we know that this interest rate is lower, which I just identified, right? The government is borrowing less. And so what we have to write in part E is what's going to happen to that long run aggregate supply curve. So the long run aggregate supply curve. Now we're going to see that more funds are going to be available, right? So businesses will borrow. Capital formation will occur. So this long run, now they're having more money to produce stuff, so that curve will shift to the right. GDP will increase. Will shift to the right because, sorry, I just abbreviate, of the lower interest rate. There we go. We've officially answered a short answer question, and I explained it. There we go, guys. For those of you taking the AP exam, I'll be doing more reviews pretty soon. I don't know what this thing is, but I'll be doing more reviews in the future of going back through Unit 1, Unit 2, Unit 3 stuff. Okay? Bye, guys.